Well, I would need to, I'll just do a short introduction to Charley. He's around Arlington all the time. Any place that you see birds, you'll see Charley. He's a Texas Master Naturalist. He's past president twice of the Fort Worth Audubon Society. He's led birding trips all over the state. And he's gone internationally as far as Costa Rica, Ecuador, Europe, and Canada. Of course, his favorite destination, as he mentioned earlier, is Big Bend. So I won't take up any more time. Charley, it's yours.
We're going to talk about native plants for the birds. I realize that many of you are probably going to be much better at identifying plants than I am. In fact, I know for a fact many of you are. Hopefully I can do the bird portion of it. But if you have any questions or if you hear me identify something wrong, throw it in the chat. You won't hurt my feelings one single bit. Talk about native plants are for the birds. What is a native plant? I looked this up and I think this, I even forget the source now, but it's a native plant is a plant that is a part of the balance of nature that has developed over hundreds or even thousands of years. And here's the important part, in a particular region or an ecosystem. So what we're concerned about is, what is a native plant for north central Texas? Just because it's a native plant in South Texas, say the Rio Grande Valley, does not mean it's going to grow well here. Okay, so we're looking for native plants that are in our region. Now, if you're going to take a trip to the Rio Grande Valley, you may want to know what plants are going to be native for there. So that's the important part of that description. Why natives? Native birds need native plants, and native plants need native birds. Native birds need native plants for food, shelter, and water. Native plants need native birds to help disperse the seeds from those plants. Now, just because you took a trip to Costa Rica and you got some seeds for a cecropia tree, and you managed somehow to grow a cecropia tree in your backyard, do not expect to see a yellow-throated toucan in your yard. It's not going to happen. So native plants go with native birds. What are some of the advantages of native plants? They're better adapted to the local weather conditions. If you remember a couple of Februarys ago, we had that really terrible storm. A lot of people's plants died and stuff. Even I had some die. I've got about 98% of my yard is native plants. The only plants that did not come back after that storm were non-natives. So, and some of my non-natives made it too. I'll have to admit that. But the native ones weathered the conditions a whole lot better. Also conserve water, and they protect the soil from erosion because usually native plants, their roots grow better. Create a habitat, provide food for many animals like birds, mammals, and pollinators. And here's a good one, beauty and joy. How many of you have heard of Marie Kondo, her method for cleaning house, cleaning out your wardrobe and stuff? Her idea is to take all of your clothing, put them on the bed, hold up each piece individually, and if it sparks joy, you hang on to it. Well, when I go out into a forest and I see a beautiful native plant, it sparks joy. So I'm going to work to hang on to those things. So it does spark beauty and joy. It's usually easy to grow, and it takes little maintenance. Now, a caveat on that is after it is established. Once it's established, it does okay. What do birds need? They need the same three things that you and I need. They need food, water, and shelter. We're going to take these individually. We're going to talk about food first, if I can get there. But what should we be looking for to find food for birds? If we're looking for birds, what should we be looking for? As this lady is walking into the forest, I can just see right straight ahead of her. All she needs to do is sit down and wait. Birds are going to be coming there. They got trees, shrubs, all kinds of vines, ferns. There's going to be seeds all over the place. Probably a few things have fruit on them. So there's going to be all kinds of food and stuff here for the birds. First thing we're looking at is trees and shrubs. Now, trees, can be things like oaks, elms, hackberries, junipers, yaupon, even Osage orange, pecan, walnut. Some of the shrubs are American beautyberry, Texas sage, coral berries, Greg salvia. The list just goes on and on. Now, if you will notice on this Texas sage on the right, it's in flower. That flower, in fact, mine did that a couple of days ago. And then whenever I see it flowering like that, I know that within the next 24 to 48 hours, we're going to get rain. It never fails me. It always does that. But what I really like about it, I can go out there right now and that thing is going to be covered with bees, butterflies, all kinds of little pollinating flies and wasps. And all that stuff is bird food. Okay. And I've also had wrens nest in that shrub. So this provides everything they need, all the shrubs and the trees. The next thing I look for is an open area with wildflowers. Some of you that frequent Randall Mill Park may recognize this site right here. This is a trail cutting through, and this little open area here. Last year, it had a whole lot of lemon bee balm, upright prairie coneflowers, and things of that nature. This year, that spotted horse mint, black-eyed Susans, it's just completely full. And in the spring, there's all kinds of butterflies and bees and stuff all over this place. But from where I'm standing to take this picture till I get to the far end where the trees begin, if I'm there at about 7 o'clock in the morning, I can guarantee you I'm going to either hear or see at least 5 different species of birds. They're going to be calling from up in the trees. They're going to be calling from down in the flowers. They're going to be around there. So if you find open fields like this, look for birds. Another area to look for when you're going around is water. That can be a lake. It can be a pond. It can be a river or a stream. It can be a mud puddle even, just a puddle. And if you think, and it needs to be moving if at all possible, because the movement of water will really attract birds. If you have a bird bath, which most of us do, I'm sure, you want at least one area in that bird bath that's has no more depth than about 1 inch, because then the smaller birds can bathe in it. If it's about a 2 to 3 inch depth all the way across, the little birds like chickadees can't really get in it and bathe. You may put a big rock or something in there that'll give them somewhere to stand. Oh, and people always ask me, how often should I change the water in my bird bath? My response is always take a really good look at it. If you won't drink it, don't expect your birds to either. So just hose it out, put fresh water in it every day or two, the most. What do birds eat? All birds eat insects. Every single bird. I can't think of a bird that does not eat insects to some extent. Even like the Mississippi kites and things that we're getting in now, even most of their food, they will take a bird or small mammal, but they eat a lot of cicadas, a lot of dragonflies and things of that nature. And then, of course, the wrens and the warblers and the thrushes like the American robin and the bluebirds, they all eat worms and grasshoppers and all kinds of stuff. Oh, and back to insects. I can't think of a single plant that does not attract insects. Now, some of them may attract insects in their death. After a tree dies or something, like for instance, ball cypress, for instance, once it dies, it's going to decay, and that decay is going to bring in all kinds of grubs and stuff. So all plants are going to have insects around them, some form. Another thing that birds eat is fruit. Here we got American robin. He's eating off of my, I don't know how he got there without the mockingbird chasing him off, but he's eating off of my American beautyberry. And then cedar waxwings, which we actually get in the winter time. They're going to be here winter through about mid-spring, and they'll come in gangs of about 25 to several hundred sometimes, and they will wipe out a possum haw bush or a yaupon or a mulberry. They just go in and consume all the berries. And then of course, cardinals, they'll eat berries and fruits and stuff too. And what are some of the fruit producing natives that we have around? I took a picture of my plum tree on the left, beautyberry in the center, and then this possum haw. I've got 2 of them in my yard. This is not one of them. This is actually over at River Legacy. And another thing that birds eat is nectar. And I put the one on the left on there because we do get Baltimore Orioles in this migration. They're here for a week or 2, and you can attract them to nectar, like the same nectar that you would attract a hummingbird to. Also, they'll take like grape jelly and fruit. They have a sweet tooth, to say the least. And of course, hummingbirds. When we get to hummingbirds, I'll tell you a little story about those guys. But some of the nectar producing natives are red yucca. That's kind of like cocaine for hummingbirds. Flamacanthus and Turk's cap. Turk's cap is really good. It likes a little bit of shade and some sun, but not full either one. But it's a really good little plant to have. And it's called Turk's cap because of the little blossom that kind of looks like a Turkish turban. But that little turban holds a lot of nectar in it. Some of the other ones are like rusty black haw, mulberries, Mustang grape, which I would not encourage you to put in your yard, but it's good to snack on as you're roaming around in the woods. I do it all the time. American pokeweed. The berries are toxic to us, but not to the birds. Persimmons. Lantana has a little berry that mockingbirds like. Prickly pear is really good. Coralberry, yopon, juniper berry, and that'll give you a little burst of sweet smelling breath if you eat a couple of those. And then of course hackberry. Hackberry tree is one of the has a lot of fruit on it that the birds really love. It's got a big seed in it though. Birds need seed, and I couldn't think of any plant that doesn't have some kind of a seed. Like a pecan or an acorn or whatever. All plants have some kind of seed. Here I've got goldfinches, which we get in the wintertime and into early spring. Usually we don't see them in this plumage. Once we see them start getting bright yellow and black like that, they're fixing to leave. They're headed back up north. They'll normally look like the one on the bottom left. That's actually a female. The males will look like that when they're here. But you can get as many as, I've had customers come into the store down there where I worked, saying they had over 200 of them in their yard. I took these guys over at Village Creek Drying Beds. They were on some thistles. Chickadee, I got him on some thistle. And then painted buntings, of course, they come here in the spring and through the summer. They're here right now. They nest here and they get seeds too. In the wintertime, some of our seed eaters we get, and these we only get in the winter and early spring. These are the winter sparrows that come from up north. There's actually about 15 or 20 different species of winter sparrows, but the ones you're going to see in your backyard most often will be the white-crowned, white-throated, maybe a Lincoln sparrow, but this one on the right top is the Harris's sparrow. Fort Worth Nature Center opened up a brand new trail in June. They're calling it the Reclamation Trail. It's an easy trail, about 3/4 of a mile little loop, and it's pretty level. It's not a whole lot of elevation to it. It's an easy hike. When I first started on the hike here, I came up on this open area here with all these flowers. This is Texas thistle. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's going to be a lot of bees and grasshoppers, and sure enough, there were a lot of dragonflies. I had about 5 different species of dragonflies. All of that is bird food. So I'm thinking, what birds are here right now that would be coming after these guys? I know in the wintertime, all this stuff is going to be seed, and we're going to have all the winter species like we talked about, the seed eater sparrows and the chickadees and the goldfinches are going to be out in this field getting the seeds. But right now, what's here to get after those bugs and the nectar And that's going to be some of the finches and stuff we get. In fact, I started scanning the tops of these trees you see in the background, and that's what I found. There was a painted bunting sitting up at the top singing his heart out. And so he's there trying to catch bugs because he's here for breeding purposes. And that means if they got babies on the nest, they're feeding them insects. Even a seed-eating bird is going to feed insects to its babies because those babies need protein. And so that's what they're feeding. Even hummingbirds. Most people don't realize it, but about 60% of a hummingbird's diet is insects. They'll fly up, catch an insect, and feed it to their babies. Other seed-producing natives, all the grasses like the inland sea oats, of course, trees like pecans and that kind of stuff, and acorns, and then all the wildflowers have seeds. A bunch of my purple coneflowers, I got a ton of purple coneflowers and black-eyed Susans in my yard, and they've gone to seed heads. What I normally do is just pull the seed heads off and drop them back down, and then just stomp them into the dirt. And then I now have coneflowers coming up all over my yard. It's just amazing. But every plant, I can't think of a single plant that doesn't have some kind of a seed somewhere. So if you know, I want to put it in the chat. Birds, they nest in our trees, but they also look for our plants for shelter, like during storms and things like that. People always ask, what do birds do when it's a thunderstorm or tornado or hurricane coming through? They do like we do. We hunker down. They find a place to get in out of the rain. This guy here, I'm sure you've been seeing him around if you just take a walk in the park or even the neighborhood. I've got at least 3 different Mississippi kite nests in my neighborhood within a 2 or 3 block radius. They get in the tallest trees. This is a pine tree here, but there's a tree over at Randall Mill Park. It's a sycamore tree. It's right at the corner of one of the big parking lots, and it never fails. There's always 2 Mississippi kites up at the top of that. And these guys are the absolute best as far as flying goes. And again, their main staple that they really go after are cicadas and dragonflies. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone out on my patio to get rid of or to water a hanging basket. You put a hanging basket on your patio, even after it dies and you're going to go remove it, look at it before you take it off, because there may be a dove nesting in it. I can't tell you how many times I've had dove nest in our on our patio and plants and shrubs. And if you've got a tree that is dying or has a big hole in it, as long as it's not in an area where it's a danger to people or to a property, leave it if you can. Maybe cut some limbs off of it and stuff, but leave it, particularly if it's got big holes, because you may get all kinds of stuff nest in that. This is a little eastern screech owl. These guys are only about 8 or 9 inches tall, and they actually eat a lot of big moths and stuff that fly around, like the sphinx moths and some of those guys that fly around at night. They will take a mouse and that kind of stuff. But birds are not going to fly off with something heavier than they are, so he's pretty limited. And if you ever watch an old movie that has like a swamp at night and scary music and stuff, and you hear this trill in the background, this is the culprit. It's called eastern screech owl. They do that little trill you hear in the swamps. Oh, this guy. Hummingbirds. You can see the baby on the left with his head up. Mama, she builds a nest out of plant down and spider webs, and she'll weave all that in. It's no bigger than, that whole nest is about the size of a plum that you would buy in a grocery store, maybe the size of a $50. And she'll put those plant downs in there, tie them up with a spider web, and then she'll put mosses and lichens on the outside of it where it looks just like a bump on the limb. And usually there's a lot of limbs with a lot of big leaves and stuff above it for protection. She'll lay 2 little white eggs in there about the size of your little fingernail. And then the chicks hatch, and as they grow, that nest will expand with those babies, and it breathes with them. I've seen dozens and dozens of these hummingbird nests, but I've never found one. I've always seen the bird fly to it or had somebody else show me where it was. But they're just really a marvel. And you think about it, she builds all that just using her beak. She doesn't have, thumbs or anything like that. Now, if you've ever seen a hummingbird feed its babies, you think it's killing it because she takes that long bill and sticks it down the throat of that baby and pumps it up and down in there. And you think it's going to come out the rear end of that baby. It's really kind of interesting to watch. And again, there's always two babies. And the hummingbirds, we get them in migration. They come here in the spring and they go back in the fall. And they fly from Central America to the Texas coast. The two we get most of the time are the black-chin hummingbird, which is really a western species. We're right on the border, and our ruby-throated hummingbird. The female, which this one is, has a clear white throat. The male is going to have either a ruby red throat or a purple throat if it's a black-chin. Now, the flight that it takes across the Gulf of Mexico is 525 miles from Rockport, Texas, to the Yucatan Peninsula. It takes that bird 25 hours to fly across. It cannot stop. It cannot. If it lands on the water, it dies. It cannot take off from the water. So it has to fly continuously for 25 hours. And he expends as much energy as you and I would spend if we ran a 4-minute mile for 25 hours with no sleep, no food, and no water. So it's no wonder these little guys are pretty mean little birds. And they do that twice a year, spring and fall. Woodpeckers. Two woodpeckers we have here most of the time is this guy, which is a red-bellied woodpecker. You might be able to see a little bit of red right in here around the belly, a little bit of pinkish color, but usually you can't even see that. The one on the left is the female. You'll notice the nape of her head is red. The male is in the nest, and the red goes all the way down to his bill. And also notice that bill is only about 3/4 to an inch long. Now, if he's got a grub that he hears at about, say, 4 or 5 inches inside that tree, how does he get it out? He drills through till he gets their little tunnel, and then he's got a tongue that's probably 3 to 4 times longer than his bill. It has a barb on the end of it like a fish hook, and he shoots that tongue in there and harpoons that grub and then pulls it back in. And you think, well, where did all that tongue go? He's got a cavity that goes all the way around his skull, and that tongue goes up into that cavity and ready for next use. It's pretty amazing little adaptation. But now we also get a couple of other woodpeckers in the wintertime. We get a yellow-bellied sapsucker, and we get not a pileated. We do get some of them, but not very often. We get a northern flicker, yellow-shafted flicker. And I'll show you one of those here in a minute. But the sapsucker, you can always tell when they've been around because they're the ones, if you see a tree that has all these little holes that are like 1/4 of an inch spaced apart in line, and maybe 2 or 3 lines of those holes, that's the sapsucker that does that. He'll drill those holes through the bark, just down to the bottom, to the heart of the tree. And then that'll get the sap running. Then he comes back in about an hour to get any ants or any insects that are stuck in that sap. And that's what he's going after. And sometimes other birds will hang around those guys. So when the sap starts running, they'll get there ahead of him and try to get the ants before the woodpecker gets back. Chickadees and titmice do that a lot. And yes, their name really is yellow-bellied sapsucker. And then another bird that we're going to get in the holes of the trees and stuff like that are going to be little tiny birds called chickadees and titmice. This is a tufted titmouse. And the neat thing about both of these guys, chickadees and titmice, you'll see them come to your feeder and get one seed and then leave. Their bill is not structured where they can just sit there and crack seed after seed. and eat it, like a cardinal, say, for instance. They have to go over flat to a perch, hold the seed down with both feet, and then hammer it open with the bill, and then eat the meat out of it, and then fly back and get one more seed and do the same thing over again. If you want to get them to stay there a little bit longer and feed, try switching to a no mess type seed, one that does not have shells, that's already been shelled. Plus, that's in the long run, it's cheaper, and you don't have a whole lot of waste to clean up. But anyway, that's what these guys do. And they fuss a lot. Sometimes you'll see flocks of little birds flying together. There'll be chickadees, titmice, downy woodpeckers. Maybe in the springtime, you'll have a few warblers, like a black and white warbler, all in the same flock, and they're moving through the trees together as a group, feeding. Well, they all eat basically the same stuff, little spiders and bugs and worms and stuff that they find. More eyes find more food. Also, more eyes let each other know if there's a predator around, like a hawk or something like that. So it's called, we call them feeding flocks. Carolina wren, we get two wrens here most of the time. It's a Carolina wren and the Buick's wren. I've had both of them nest at the same time on my patio. I had the Carolina wren nest in an old garden hat I had by my back door. And while she had babies on the nest, my wife Nancy and I, we had to go out through the garage to get to her backyard. We couldn't even go through that door. She would be really fussy. But if you notice her bill, it's long and pointed. That's for getting insects. She digs around looking for little spiders and stuff and cracks and things of that nature. She will go to a feeder, but usually what she's doing is looking for an insect in that food. She will eat a seed. I actually watched one time swallow a whole peanut. And of course, bluebirds. Bluebird boxes are nice, but they also use cavities that woodpeckers have made, or trees that, rotted a limb off or something like that. So always look for those too. Right now, Randall Mill Park is a great place to go see bluebirds. We have 3 different bluebirds in North America. We've got eastern bluebird, which is what we have here. You get a little farther out west, they have a western bluebird. And then up in the mountains, they have a mountain bluebird. All of them are beautiful. They all basically eat the same type of stuff. And mockingbirds. My mockingbird nest, I've got this on one end of my backyard. I've got a American pokeweed, which is about 7 feet tall and loaded with berries. Right next to it, I have a beautyberry. And then next to that, I've got a false indigo bush, which has a lot, is basically serving as an arbor for a bunch of coral honeysuckle. And there's mockingbirds nest inside all of that mess. And if you get too close to the pokeberries, she's going to come out. She'll dive bomb you and chase you off like that. And she'll eat those purple berries off of the pokeweed and then go sit on my white SUV and poop. And that's kind of disgusting. Oops, here we go. Cardinals. Cardinals will nest in a shrub that you may walk past within a foot, and you go by because the shrub's got all kinds of leaves and stuff on it. You'll never know she's there until it comes wintertime and all the leaves fall off, and you go, oh wow, there's a nest right there. And she was right there the whole time, raised 2 or 3 chicks the whole time. You never knew she was in there. You knew she was in the backyard somewhere. Every family that has any kind of a yard at all will have a pair of cardinals living there. Now in the wintertime, you're going to have more, because we also get the cardinals and stuff that come from up north during the winter. They'll come here. So she's not nesting, she's not protecting her turf. So but come spring, she's going to chase those interlopers away, and that's going to be her home. You look her up in the phone book, she's got the same address you do. Now, the only difference, but this is the male. The female is going to be more brown and gray, but she will also have that kind of an orange, reddish orange bill. Now, if you see a juvenile, a fledgling, he's going to look just like the female, except he's going to have a dark, almost black bill. And so that's the way you can tell it's a juvenile. all birds, I say all, 99% of the birds, when they leave the nest, when the baby grows up and either leaves the nest by walking out or by flying off, a fledgling, they're going to be the same size or larger than the adults. Because you think about it, all they've been doing is sitting on that nest getting fed, and they're not getting any exercise. But I don't care if it's a hummingbird or if it's a bald eagle, that fledgling is going to be the same size as the parent. Oh, another thing about cardinals and also blue jays, and right now is the time you may notice this. All birds molt all their feathers, just like you and I, we molt all our skin at least once or twice a year. They will molt all of their feathers off, and they're going through a molt right now. And so you may see a cardinal or a blue jay that has no feathers at all on its head. All you have is this little naked black skull, and it looks really gross. You think, oh my gosh, he's sick. He's got some kind of disease like feather mites or something. No, he just molted all of his feathers off. They'll grow back. And go through some of the native plants that I actually have in my yard. This is just a very few of them. I got coralberry. These berries, I think this is one of the berries that the birds will eat when there's really not much else around. It doesn't have a whole lot of flavor to it. It's kind of bland. The Texas lantana, it gets these little berries on it. They're kind of a blackish purple berry. Mockingbirds really go for that like crazy. Of course, for us, it's going to be bringing in all the insects, the butterflies and moths and stuff like that eat the bird. Birds eat those. But mockingbirds love the berries on these. Coral honeysuckle, as you can see, there's a bee on this one right here. That's food. Also, the hummingbirds love these things. And so does my wife. She likes them because the flower actually comes out of the center of the leaf. It's kind of weird. In the shade and stuff under some of the trees, I've got yellow columbine, which is great for butterflies and bees. Millie blue sage and Eastern redbud. I don't have one of these, but I want to get one. My wife, we just lost a mulberry tree, so she wants to replace it with a Eastern redbud, so that's why I put that there. And it gets little beans on it, which also seeds. This guy, false indigo bush, see those little fuzzy flowerets on there, little bronze-looking flowers? Those get covered up with little gray hair streak butterflies and bees. Well, it's looking like this. You can't go outside and not see about 15 or 20 different little insects crawling all over this thing, getting all the pollen off of it. It's really an amazing little bush to have. I highly recommend this bush. And I've got 3 of them in my yard. Of course, the Indian blankets and the coneflowers and those kind, the ray flowers, these are great for butterflies. You can say, and butterflies are one of those things you can actually sneak up on and get really good photographs of and stuff like that. So anytime you're out walking around and you see a field with wildflowers like these guys, just slow down and take time to look and see what all different kind of insects you got. And I was really amazed at how different little bees there are. I mean, there are some bees that are so tiny you even have to zoom in on them to be able to see them. They're little bitty, tiny guys. They're not all honeybees, and they're just working their little tails off getting that pollen. And coreopsis, I got a lot of this coming up. Once you put this one plant in your yard, you're going to have 100 of them. So you got to, keep it in control. Most native plants, if it's really liking what you've got, you have to work at it to keep it under control. This just sprung up in my yard. This is called late boneset. And right now, mine's beginning to look like this. And it's about 6 feet tall, I guess, in the front. And I'll leave it there. It just sprung up. It absolutely has a ton of little bees and butterflies all over, just like that false indigo does. This is a fantastic little bush. I am so glad it chose my house to come in. And this is the northern flicker. The yellow shafted flicker. If you'll notice underneath his wings and his tail is yellow shafts. The same species out west has red. It's a red shafted flicker. This is another one of those woodpeckers that we get in the wintertime. He's on sumac, and I don't have a sumac, but I would like to get one just strictly for the seed heads it provides for the birds, but also for that beautiful red color you get during the late autumn. It's amazing. Purple cone flowers, I already told you about those guys. We get those. I got a few plants, maybe 10 or 12 plants, and put them around in different places. And when they die back, I just pop their heads off and drop them, and they go like crazy. Another one you got to control. But a butterfly, if a butterfly lands on one of these flowers, he's going to be there for about 5 minutes because he's going around to each one of those little flowers in the center part, getting the pollen out of them. And each one of them, there's probably 200 or 300 of them on each little individual flower. So that's a lot of pollen. An opportunity to get some really good photos. And of course, asters. We get those. This is your fall flower. If you ever do crossword puzzles and the clue is fall plant or fall flower, asters. But they're really pretty when they bloom. This is my wife's favorite flower. It's called purple passion flower. We've got a vine in our backyard, several vines actually in our backyard. And she actually counts the flowers every day to see how many she's got. That keeps her busy, I guess. But I like to watch the flowers because you can see the little tri-cross looking thing on the front, the top of it. A bumblebee will get in underneath that, and then he'll just kind of go around in a circle like a little carousel, and you see the pollen scraping off of it onto his back. It's really kind of funny, comical to watch. Of course, this is the host plant for the fritillaries, Gulf fritillary. And so she also goes out and counts all the caterpillars and stuff too. And this is common yarrow, white flower yarrow. You can see how tiny the leaves are on this. It kind of looks like a fern, but it's not. And again, you get little bitty tiny bees. I'm real small. And some of them are violet green looking little bees, little sweat bees. Metallic. We're going to look at the guardians of the yard. This is a barred owl, and he is right at the moment he's eating a little lizard. But they'll go after any kind of mice, rats, things like that. The creepy crawly stuff that comes around at night. That's what they're there to keep under control. And I don't know if any of you have ever been to Oliver Nature Center in Mansfield. It's a really neat little park, and in the springtime, it's a great little park to go to, not only for the barred owls down there, but also for the bluebonnets. They have a nice little field there that they get tons of bluebonnets in. But I took a group from one of the home schools. We had a group doing a field trip down there, and we would come across where I knew that some barred owls were nesting. And we stopped along the way, and I asked the kids, I said, "What do you see up in the trees?" Well, their response was, "Monkeys." And I got to looking, and I thought, those three guys do kind of look like monkeys. And there were 3 of them up there. These are actually barred owl fledglings. And they're poking and prodding at each other and nuzzling each other. Whereas I'm watching these, and the little kids are enjoying the heck out of it. And we're about maybe 20 feet or so away from these guys. I'm thinking, okay, where's Mama? Well, Mama was about 10 feet away from us, watching us, making sure we didn't go towards those babies. And so I kept the kids, kind of back away a little bit so we didn't get too close. I actually did one time, and she come dive bomb me. Another guardian you may have in your backyard is a Cooper's hawk. This guy is super fast. I can look out sometimes and I'll see just his top of his head and his eyes looking over my back fence. And when he comes over, and when he sees the bird that he's after, or rat or whatever he's after, he's going to come over real low, fly as low as he can and as fast as he can. And usually once they see it's an explosion of birds. I mean, all the doves, they just panic and fly off. Some will hit the windows and stuff like that. Sorry about that. But more often than not, he misses, but quite often he does catch. And so he will thin the herd. He'll get the weaker one or the one that's not paying attention. He keeps it down. So if you got a hawk coming in and getting any of your birds at your feeder, this is 99% of the time the culprit. And then Mississippi cotton, we'd already talked about these guys up in the tops of the trees. They're going to also be going here, pretty soon. They'll be flying back down to South America, Central to South America. And then we'll get them again in the springtime. And the hawks, whenever they migrate, they can't go across the Gulf like the hummingbirds and some of the smaller birds do. They have to stay over land. So they go through South Texas, down through Mexico, and Central America, and on into South America. All the hawks in North America do this. They do what's called kettling. It's like a steam kettle or a tea kettle. As the heat rises from the ground, these hawks will get on these thermals that are rising up, hot thermals, and they'll just open their wings and they'll just circle and circle and circle. You've probably seen like vultures do that. They're doing the same thing. They get all the way up to the top of the thermal, and then they stream off. And they may stream and catch the next thermal, go up and do it again. And over a course of a day, they can travel 200 or 300 miles and never even once flap their wing. It's an amazing sight to watch. That's pretty much the conclusion on this, but I do want to make a statement here in conclusion of this. In looking for native plants, I want to encourage you to get out of the manicured gardens, take a walk in the woods, take a walk in a park, look around as you go through, not only at the scenery and stuff, yeah, this is kind of pretty, the little sun coming down and stuff, but look at the individual plants. What plants are growing in the rocky soil? What plants are growing on the sunny side of this road versus the dark side of the road? What is the difference in the type of flowers, the thickness? What kind of trees are over on this side versus the trees on that side? What kind of plant is growing down next to a creek or a water or a little pond? How's it doing there? What are some of the companion plants with it? What bird did you see eating the seeds off of it, for instance? Look around, notice things that are different rather than just walking with the headphones on and listening to music or a podcast. Pay attention to what you're seeing. Go slow and just, maybe a couple of 100 yards. You don't have to go far, and you can see all kinds of things. You may see a flower that's growing or a shrub that's growing. You think, wow, that'd be good to have. I've got a spot in my backyard that would fit just perfect for that. And so you can identify what that plant is, go to Weston Gardens or some other garden center and see if you can find that plant and try it in your yard. Give it a shot. It may work out for you. That's the way I got a lot of mines. I would encourage you not to dig them up in a park because a lot of the parks, don't want you taking their plants away. But you can at least identify what it is, where you saw it, and then try to incorporate that into your landscape. I do want to leave you with a couple of websites that I find that is very helpful. One is the audubon.org/native-plants. On that one there, all it asks you for is your zip code. You go in and you put your zip code in, and it will give you a list of plants, native plants that are native to that zip code. And then it will, for instance, on mine is 76012, and they tell like 300 and some odd different native plants. And it will tell you what kind of wildlife it supports and that kind of stuff. It will show you a picture of it, and so you can see what the flower looks like and all that kind of stuff. And the next one is the TexasNativePlants.org. That's a good one to go to also for the plants around here in our area. So with that, if you got any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
Oh, here's a comment. I had mockingbirds eating the chilies off of my chili piquin this year. So I have mockingbirds like that, right?
Oh, yes.
And pigeonberries.
Birds are not as susceptible to hot things like with the capsaicin and the peppers. That doesn't bother them like it does people. some people.
Do birds have taste buds?
Yes, they do. Some is stronger in some than in others, just like the olfactory, the smell, the sense of smell. The only bird we have in North America that actually really hunts on smell is the turkey vulture. Even the black vulture hunts on sight, but the turkey vulture is the only one that hunts on smell. But all birds have some sense of smell. It's just weaker than in them. And taste is the same way.
Now, when we had the cowbirds in Randallville Park laying eggs in the bluebird nest boxes,
Yeah.
Looked at things online and it said that the bluebirds could not detect that it was a cowbird egg because I'm trying to think of why they can't really recognize it as a foreign egg and get rid of it.
Is the egg the same size?
No.
Basically, yeah, it is big.
The cowbird egg is about twice or three times as big as the bluebird egg.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of thoughts on cowbirds and house sparrows and starlings, but I won't get into that argument.
We got a couple more questions. Let
Okay.
me see where they
By
are
the way,
there
go ahead.
are there any birds that are dying back that we need to be aware of?
Well, all birds are suffering because of the weather and stuff like that. But then there are some that are threatened, some that are endangered and stuff like that, like the golden cheek warbler and some of those guys. But I wouldn't say that there's too many of. Usually, a bird, if it's having a problem, if there's a food shortage or something like that, the bird will lay fewer eggs, or she may not even choose to lay any eggs that season if she can't find the food farm or stuff like that. They can kind of regulate that.
Are there any plants that are poisonous to birds? I remember something about cedar waxwings.
Yeah, there is, like the nandina. They are, but birds for the most part are smart enough not to eat them. The waxwings, once they run out of the other food in desperation because they are starving, and sometimes they will eat the nandina bushes or the nandina berries, and they're supposedly pretty high in cyanide, and so that will kill them. There's instances of it, but for the most part, well, I would say most animals won't eat something if it's toxic to them. And some of them won't eat it because of the texture of it. Like, for instance, the Osage orange, the bodart, the horse apples. Birds will eat them once something else, like a raccoon or something, has broken up the horse apple itself, and the individual little seeds are laying there. But a bird, it will be kind of his last choice of food. Reason being, it's so sticky, and it sticks on their bill a lot. For instance, mistletoe. Sometimes you'll see birds eating mistletoe berries, and what they do, then you'll immediately see them wiping their bill on the branch, trying to clean off their bill. And when they do that, it spreads the seed, and the mistletoe will start growing there. So they're seeing the seed by doing that.
Do you keep your seed feeders going all year round?
I do, but I'm real stingy with it right now because particularly when the birds have babies, they're not going for seed; they're going for insects. Like particularly hummingbird feeders. People ask me, particularly in the month of June and July, I'm not seeing any hummingbirds. Well, nobody is, because she's going after insects to feed her babies. Now, end of August and into September, they're going to be hitting feeders. That's the best time to put your hummingbird feeders out. Incidentally, don't put any kind of red dye in your hummingbird feeder. Nobody goes out there putting red dye in the flowers. Well, they don't need that. But that's when they need to double their weight. I told you that all the energy they expend flying across the Gulf of Mexico, they have to double their weight to be able to make that flight. And so that's why they're hitting the hummingbird feeders, going for the sugar water and stuff. But during the time when they got babies they're feeding and stuff like that, they're going after insects, as are most other birds. The cardinals will be feeding them insects and stuff like Now, there are
Cecily-
some,
oh,
there are some birds that their babies are born precocial versus altricial. Altricial is when a baby bird is born, he's naked, his eyes are closed, he has no feathers. He's totally 100% dependent on the mother or the father to feed him. 100%. It can't survive without them. But now, birds like the sandpipers, like the killdeer, for instance, when her baby hatches out of that egg, and that egg lasts a lot longer than the altricial. When the baby hatches out of that egg, it's fully feathered. It's got a kind of a fuzzy down, but they can move. They get there. In fact, shorebirds, the mother never feeds the baby. Never. Not one time does she ever feed the baby. When he hatches, he's going after bugs. He's immediately going after food. And this is why you'll see these little baby killdeers running around following mom, because she's trying to take them to where the food is, but they have to catch it and eat it. And sometimes you'll watch birds like the flycatchers, the scissortails and stuff like that. The way they teach their babies to catch, because they catch their insects on the fly in the air. She'll catch a grasshopper and fly up in the air. Well, the baby flies up there with her, and then she'll let that grasshopper go, and the baby tries to catch it. If he misses, she'll go down and catch it and come back and try again. And so she's trying to teach it how to catch insects in flight. It's pretty cool. Question.
Yes, there's a couple, 2 or 3 more. Cecily says, a friend of mine in Kansas found an injured kestrel today. They put it in a kennel and gave it some grasshoppers and water. Do you have any recommendations for them until they are able to contact someone who can rehab the injured bird?
Yeah, number one, call a rehabber, wild bird rehabber. Almost every city's got one or two. I've got 2 of them that call me all the time, wondering where to release a certain bird. But one of the main things is when you find a baby bird, if it truly is injured, it's got a broken wing or something like that, yes, get a hold of a rehabber. But if you find a baby bird, and baby birds are everywhere, if it has feathers on it, it did not fall out of the nest. It jumped out. And it needs about 2 to 3 days of walking around, hopping around, flapping its wings before it can learn how to fly. Mama knows where it is. You may not see her. You maybe think, well, she's abandoned it, and so this poor little baby bird is all by itself. If you take that baby bird and leave with it, basically you've kidnapped the bird, and it won't survive. So leave. The best thing you can do for a baby bird that is fully feathered is keep pets away from it. Maybe put a little saucer of water out, but I wouldn't do anything other than that. Don't try to feed it, because you don't know what kind of bug to feed it versus what mom's going to feed. Mom's feeding it. Mom's coming back and forth with food. She knows where that baby is.
Charlie, I just wanted to give you some feedback on that. They said that, so they called my friend because she was a science teacher. They said it had been out, this bird had been out in front of the school for 2 or 3 days and can't fly, is not moving around much. So that's at the point they went and got it. So.
Yeah, if something injured it or something like that, yeah, definitely call a rehab.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And a lot of times you can call one of the Wild Bird Unlimited stores, and they'll have a list of the rehabbers for you to contact.
Okay, thank you.
In many instances, that rehabber will come and pick it up from you if you can't get it to them.
Great, thank you.
Okay, if you could pick one favorite native plant for your yard, what would it be?
Pokeweed.
Milkweed?
Pokeweed.
Oh, pokeweed. Oh,
Yeah. The birds will eat the berries, and I'll eat the new leaves.
all right.
Poke salad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Mama used to make that all the time.
But I really don't have a favorite plant. I don't even really have a favorite bird anymore. My favorite bird is whatever one I'm looking at the moment. It may even be a house sparrow, depending on what it's doing, because birds play. Birds goof around, do goofy stuff. But as far as plants go, something that's sturdy and brings you joy. When you look at it, you see joy. Okay. As long as my wife's around, I'm going to make sure I've got a passion vine somewhere around for her to go out and count the flowers. But just, something that is appealing to you, something that doesn't take a whole lot of water, doesn't take a whole lot of care. But just because it's native doesn't mean you should grow it. I would not encourage you to grow Carolina snail seed. Not encourage you to grow Virginia creeper. They're beautiful plants, beautiful berries, but boy, do they take over.
Okay, I guess this is more an editorial thing. How about hawks eating songbirds?
About a
A
what?
hawk's gonna do what a hawk does, right?
Yeah, but that's a bird too. He's got to eat.
Yeah.
As you know, let nature do what nature does. You know.
So, will woodpeckers use nest boxes like bluebirds?
They will. They prefer not to, but they will. I had one little kid ask me one time. He said, "We get this woodpecker that keeps banging on our metal gutter and banging away." I said, "Well, he's sending a signal. That's the way it's called drumming. That's what they do. They'll drum out a signal. Now that's it. And I didn't tell this to the little kid. That signal is going to be one of two things. It's going to be, this is my territory. All you other woodpeckers stay out of here. Or it could be, hey, anybody want to make baby woodpeckers? You know, he's trying to get a mate, or he's trying to protect his territory. He's sending a signal. That's what he's doing.
Okay, when should we put, I think you answered this one, but when should we put the hummingbird feeders out? Or aren't we supposed to only have them out at certain times?
No, you can put them out all year long if you want to. I put mine out right about now, and I'll leave it out until like after the first freeze. Even after that, maybe for a couple of weeks, because you get some stragglers coming through. And we have one hummingbird in North America. He actually nests, or she nests in Alaska. It's called a rufous hummingbird, and almost every winter, one shows up somewhere in Tarrant County. Somebody's got one coming to a feeder. I've had friends go out and put a heat lamp on their bird bath and put nectar out. You know, keep the snow off of it.
Any birds that prefer mosquitoes like bats do?
A question, Charlie. In the springtime, you see the male cardinal a lot of time getting a seed off the feeder, taking it over, feeding the female. And that seems to happen for a week or two. And then after that, then the male eats, and then the female sits there and watches him, and then the female goes over and eating. Are we putting human emotions or human?
Hard to say. That's what I do. Yeah, that's the same thing. He's trying to attract a mate, trying to, you know, you see that on the coast a lot with terns and things of that nature. They'll bring food. The puffins, for instance, you'll see a puffin with about 5 fish in its bill, and he's taking that, trying to impress a female.
Any birds that prefer mosquitoes like bats do?
Oh yeah, not to the extent that bats do. So, but purple martin, all the swallows, purple martins, barn swallows, cliff swallows, all those guys will go after any little tiny flying insect. But a lot of them will eat mosquitoes. Yes, they catch them fight. And then, of course, in their larval stage in the water, a lot of, well, not a lot of birds, but many birds will eat them in the larvae. Some of the ducks and stuff, for instance, the northern shovelers and stuff will eat the larvae.
What's happened to the logger-headed shrikes? We want them back.
We get them, there's almost always one or two out at the Village Creek drying beds during the spring and winter and spring. Not as many as in the past, but they are suffering a little bit on their grounds.
And here's something you might want to do. Ann Dyson says there's going to be a photo at the state fair you may want to go see by Janet Hicks from Colleyville. It's an adult scissortail chasing a hawk who has a baby scissortail in its mouth.
Oh, yuck. I know Janet. Yeah. I'll have to check with her to see that. Nature can be cruel.
I've heard that people have seen a hummingbird go after a hawk that's circling.
I've seen two hummingbirds chase off a Cooper's hawk. Because basically he got a little too close to the nest, and I saw the hawk first, and he was doing this, and I'm moving his head around. I'm like, what's he doing? And I put my binoculars on him. Sure enough, there were two hummingbirds dive bombing him. And so finally he flew off. Normally, a ruby-throated hummingbird, quite often, I don't say normally, but quite often, she'll build her nest within about 100 or so feet of a Cooper's hawk's nest, simply for protection. Nobody's going to go that close to a Cooper's hawk nest, like a snake or a raccoon or something. And so she uses that too. And she knows too that he can't catch her in flight. A hummingbird is the only bird in the world that can actually fly backwards. And did you know that there are no hummingbirds in the East? They're only in South America, North America, Central America. There's none in Europe, Africa, or Asia, or anywhere else.
You didn't mention roadrunners. Do you have any?
Beep, beep, roadrunners, they can occur anywhere. They're omnivores. They eat, I've seen them eat rattlesnakes. I've seen them eat, of course, a lot of lizards, and they'll eat fruit and seeds. People always ask me, where can I go to see a roadrunner? I only know of one place that 100% of the time you go there, you're going to see a roadrunner. And if you go to Big Bend, down on the border, there's a little village there called Rio Grande Village. There's a little store, and it's where you go to get gas. And a lot of times, if you've been hiking out in the desert, you go to this little store to get an ice cream or, Gatorade. As soon as you pull into the driveway there, into the parking lot, out comes a roadrunner to get all the bugs off of your grill. And I've seen him. I photographed him one time with a coyote in the background. Of course, the coyote was blurred, but I did get him off in there. Also, the roadrunner is the fastest bird in the world that can also fly. As far as running goes, he's the fastest bird in the world that can also fly. Now, ostrich and an emu can outrun him, but they can't fly. So of the birds that can fly, he is the fastest. He can run up to speeds to 20 miles an hour in short distance. Coyote can run and burst up to 35 miles an hour. He could have caught that bird. He didn't need Acme.
There's no more questions. How do we thank Charlie? If you unmute, then you can clap, or there's an icon that you can click on that gives him a thumbs up. So let's let him know that we appreciate his all the information.
Thank you, guys. It was not quite as painful as I thought it was going to be.
You did great. Thank
Learned
you.
a lot.
All right, I'll see you guys later.